Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to Babble on Talmud. Today we're learning Daf Vav of Masechta Shabbis. What do we get into today? We get into more stuff, of course, of Hotzah Mereshus to Reshus, but we get into defining the 4 different reshuyos that there are on Shabbos. We also, the first time that the concept of an Erev comes in terms of being able to carry with an Erev, so that's kind of cool. And then I guess like some Erevin kind of topics come up, which is interesting. I think we're probably gonna have to draw some diagrams and put that into the WhatsApp group. Just a little intro there. But without further ado, let's get the show on the road. So we're gonna start on Daf Hayamud Beis, about 5 lines from the bottom. Tanu Rabbanan. Hamotzi mechanus leflat yaderch sityo chayav. Okay, so if somebody's motzi an item from a chanut. Chanut, of course, means a store, and a store is a reshut hayachid. And you take this item out from the reshut hayachid into the platya. Now, platya is basically like Main Street. It's the reshut harabim. Okay, but you take it. There was something called a sityo, I guess. Setvusa or something like that. Comes up a little bit later. Istivanis, I guess it's called. Anyways, the point is that in front of the store, there was like some kind of area where the storekeepers would kind of like sit on benches. So that wasn't exactly reshus harabim, because Rashi interestingly defines reshus harabim as a place where people walk there, right? So he says that this thing is not considered reshus harabim, dilav lehiluchahu kereshus harabim. That this istivana thing, right? Istivanis is not a reshus harabim because it's not for the walking, for the public to walk in there, right? So that seems to be the definition of reshus harabim. So this isn't reshus harabim because it's just a place for people to sit, but at the same time, it's not surrounded by 4 walls, so it's not a reshus hayachid. So it's a karmelit. So if you, and now, Hotzah Mereshus to Reshus, of course, is from a reshus hayachid into a reshus harabim, or vice versa, right? But what happens if you go from the reshus hayachid into the reshus harabim, but by way of a karmelit, such as this, how do we call it again? Istivanis. So the Chacham say that you're chayiv, because according to them, all they care about is like, look, come on, tachlis. There was an akira in reshus hayachid in the store, and there was a hanacha in reshus harabim on the main street, right, on this platya. Okay, the fact that you walked through a karmelit, that doesn't really matter. What we care is the akira in the reshus hayachid and the hanacha in the reshus harabim. Okay, uven azai poter, whereas Ben Azai says that you are patur in this case when you are moti something from reshus hayachid to reshus harabim by way of a karmelit. Okay, let's see why. So the Gemara says Bishlam of Ben Azai. So the Gemara says, okay, I don't have a problem with Ben Azai's opinion, who says that you're patur, because I can understand his rationale. He gives a rationale, and it's simple enough. Kasav mahalich ka'omei dami, because Ben Azai holds that when you walk into that karmelit, it's as if you stop in that karmelit. So the mere fact that he walked from the chanut into the karmelit, even if he didn't stop, but the fact that he sort of walked by way of this area where the shopkeepers sit, which is a karmelit, it's as though he stopped in the karmelit, and there was a hanacha in the karmelit. And then when he continues into the reshus harabim, so then it's clear there's another akira, and then finally a hanacha in the reshus harabim. But all you have was an akira in reshus hayachid, a hanacha in a karmelit, which it's patur aval aser, and then an akira from a karmelit and a hanacha in reshus harabim, which again is patur aval aser. So therefore he says, in sum total, you're just going to be patur aval aser. Ela Rabbanan, but according to the Rabbanan, nihi nami tekasavi mahalich lav ka'omei dami. Okay, fine. Granted that I get the Rabbanan's rationale. They're saying that as long as you're moving, it's not as if you're stopped at all. So therefore, you started in reshus hayachid, Sure, you passed through a karmelit, but you didn't stop in the karmelit, and then you kept on moving, and you finally stopped in the reshus harabim. So there's an akira in reshus hayachid and anach in reshus harabim. However, hecha ashkachna ki hay gavna dechayev. However, the Gemara isn't satisfied. They want a precedent. They want an example of a different place where we say something similar. That if you would have an akira in one reshus, a hanacha in a separate reshus, but you pass through a different reshus, that you would still be chayav. And we wouldn't say that passing through that karmelit would make you pater. So Amar Rav Safra, Amar Rabbi Ami, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. So says Rabbi Safra, Amar Rabbi Ami, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. You want a proof? You want an example? I'll give you an example. Midi dahava amayver chayfetz b'reshus harabim. And the example is the following case. You are in reshus harabim, you pick up something, and then you carry it more than 4 amos, and then you put it down. So you're going to be chayav for ha'avaras chayfetz daled amos, right? For moving something 4 amos in reshus harabim. Okay? Now, hasam lav afagav dechama denakad le ve'azul pater ki manach le chayav hachinami lo shna. So over there, what's going on over there? You pick something up, so you have an akira, and as long as you're walking, you can be walking all day long if you want. As long as you're walking, you're pater. Once you put it down, that is when you're chayav for carrying something daled amos in reshus harabim. The point being, all we care about is the akira and the hanacha. We then take out our measuring sticks. We see, was the hanacha more than 4 amos away than where he picked it up from? And if it is, then he's chayav. The fact that he was, the whole process is irrelevant, right? If he doesn't stop, then it'll just be pater. If he keeps on moving until the end of Shabbos, it'll be pater, right? The only important thing there is the akira and the hanacha. So therefore, we'll say the same thing over here as well. That, what's important here is that the akira was in reshus hayachid, the hanacha was in reshus harabim. We don't care what was going on in the interim while he was walking. But the Gemara isn't satisfied with that. Mi dami, is that really similar? Hasam kolecha de manachle makom chiyufu. Hacha imanachle besityo makom petur hu. The Gemara isn't satisfied. He said you can't really compare carrying something daled amos in reshus harabim to this case of going derech sityo, right? From the chanus to the platya derech sityo, because over there, anywhere he would put it down, he would be chayav, right? Anywhere in reshus harabim, if he would put it down there, he would be chayav. Therefore, it makes sense to say that when he finally puts it down, he's chayav. But in this case, he was actually, along the way, if he would have put it down in the karmelit, he would have been pater. And therefore, I might argue that since if theoretically he would have put it down in the karmelit, he would be pater. So even when he didn't put it down in the karmelit, maybe he should still be pater and not chayav, and we won't just go based on the akira and the anacha. So the Gemara says, okay, fine. So the Gemara says, okay, how about this though? Let's be a little bit more miduyak over here, a little bit more exact. What happens if a guy picks up epis in reshus harabim and he walks exactly 4 amos? Okay? Exactly 4 amos. So in that case, right? So let's say that over there, what's going on? He picks up something and he walks 4 amos with it and puts it down. Now, if he would have put it down along the way, right, before the 4 amos, he would be pater because he didn't carry it daled amos. Yet, when he carries it exactly 4 amos and puts it down, so then he is chayav, right? And we're saying that all we care about is the akira and the hanacha. We don't care that if along the way he would have put it down, he would have been pater. That's irrelevant. So let's say that it's the same thing over here also. In our context, right? That you pick up the thing in the chanut, in the market, in the store, which is reshus hayachid. You're then passing through an area where if you would put it down, you would be patur. And then you get into the main street, which is a reshus harabim, and you put it down there, and we're saying that you're chayiv. So that should be just like the case in reshus harabim when you walk exactly 4 amos, i.e. you're walking through an area where if you would put it down there, you'd be pater, and yet we're saying that when you put it down at the end of the 4 amos, you are chayiv. So let's say that that is the precedent for the chacham saying that in our case, you are chayiv. But again, the Gemara says, midami, can you really compare the two? Hasam legabi dahai gavra makom pturhu. L'chuli ama makom chiyuvu. Hach l'chuli ama makom pturhu. The Gemara says, no, you can't really compare those cases. In the case of carrying something exactly Dalan Amos from Reshus Harabim, the fact that if you would put it down along the way, he would be pater is just circumstantial. It's just because, this guy happened to be walking exactly 4 amos, so because of this unique situation where he's walking exactly 4 amos, it happens to be that the place in between, if you would put it down, you would be pater. But let's say somebody else, started carrying something 5 amos away and put it down in that same exact spot where if this guy would put it down, it would be pater. That guy would be chayav. Because, this place where he's putting it down is not inherently a place where you'd be pater for putting something down there. It's just due to this person's unique situation that he's walking exactly 4 amos, that this, that the place where he walked along the way, he would be pater if you put it down there. But in our case, where he's passing through this place where the storekeepers sit, that's objectively a makom ptur. And therefore, maybe even though in the reshus harabim, when he walks exactly 4 amos, he's chayav, even though he's passing through a place where he would be pater, right? That's because that place he's passing through is not inherently a place that you would be pater. It's only relative to his situation that he's pater. However, maybe in our case, where he's mamish passing through an area which is objectively he would be pater because it's a karmelit, maybe he would be pater when he then ends up putting it down in reshus harabim. So Ella, mididhava amotzi mereshus hayachid l'reshus harabim derech tzidei reshus harabim. Hasam lav afalgav di'imanach le'atzidei reshus harabim pater b'chimanach le'reshus harabim chayav hachinami lo shna. Oh, so now the Gemara gives another attempt. And this attempt is the following. Let's say you have a chatzer, okay? You have some kind of, let's say you have a house, okay? Let's just keep things simple. You have a house and you have a yard around your house, okay? And it's fenced. Alright, an fenced yard. Fine. Now, right outside of the fence to your, property is reshus harabim. Okay? Now, there is a breach in the fence, right? Some kind of a hole gets through the fence, okay? So now it's a thick fence, I guess a fence where you can actually pass through this fence. So we say, is it even 4 amos by 4 amos? Let's see, I'm reading Rashi, right? It's the last wide line of Rashi's. Atzidei reshus harabim z'dibar maschil, right? So reshus yachid reshus harabim, kigon chatzer shenifratz reshus harabim, davim makom amachitza atzidei reshus harabim. Okay, so we say that this area that takes up, it's like a thick kind of fence, and this area of the fence is what's called tzidei reshus harabim. And we're saying that if you were to now carry something from the chatzer, which is a reshus hayachid, through this breach in the fence, right, through this tzidei reshus harabim, and then you go into reshus harabim and put something down, so we say that you are going to be chayav. And if you were to have put it down in this tzidei reshus harabim, you would be patur. Okay? Okay, this tzidei reshus harabim, this breach in the fence is a makom patur. So if you would take something from reshus hayachid and put it down in this tzidei reshus harabim, you would be patur. And similarly, if you would take something from reshus harabim and put it down in this tzidei reshus harabim, you would be patur as well. Okay? However, if you were to pick up something in the chatzer, which is a reshus hayachid, pass through this tzidei reshus harabim, and then go into reshus harabim and put it down, you would be chayav. So that should be exactly analogous to our case, where if you start in the store and you pass through this karmelit, and then eventually put it down in reshus harabim, the chacham say that you will be chayav there as well. Okay, fine. Very good. Maskefla Rav Papa. Rav Papa asked the kasha. Hanicha l'Rabbanan de'amrei tzidei reshus harabim lav k'reshus harabim dami. Well, this is very fine and good according to the Chachamim, who say that tzidei reshus harabim, that this breach in the wall is not considered like reshus harabim, right? It's considered like this in-between area, and therefore if you would put down this thing in tzidei reshus harabim, he would be pater. El Rabbi Eliezer da amr tzidei reshus harabim k'reshus harabim dami ma'ikal meimar. But what about according to Rabbi Eliezer, who says that if you were to take something from this reshus hayachid and put it in this tzidei reshus harabim, well, actually you would be chayiv, because tzidei reshus harabim takes on is considered a reshus harabim. So if that's the case, then it's no longer an example of a situation where you're passing from reshus hayachid into reshus harabim by way of a place that is a makom p'tur, that you'd be pater from. Because according to Rabbi Eliezer, it's reshus harabim, you'd be chayiv if you put it down over there. So then we lost our precedent of a case where if you go from reshus hayachid to reshus harabim by way of an area where you'd be pater, you're still chayiv. We lost our example, at least according to Rabbi Eliezer. Now, look, according to the Chachamim, it's still a place where you would be pater, so it is still a good example. And the Maisa, always we say yachid rab malacha krabim, but I don't know, the Gemara still wants to say that, we're still limited, I guess, in some way from saying that we have like a complete example, I guess. Okay. So Amalei Rav Acha Brei Rav Ika, but Rav Acha Brei Rav Ika answers Rav Papa, and he says, Amor deshamas l'Rabbi Eliezer do amr tzidei reshus harabim k'reshus harabim dami heicha delecha chipufe aval heicha deika chipufe mishamas le hilkach lehadamya. So Rav Acha Brei Rav Ika. Now, if you remember from Masechta Brachos on Daf Nun Zayin Amud Beis, right, there was an interesting story with Rav Papa and Rav Huna Brei Rav Yoshua that they killed somebody named Rav Chanina Brei Rav Ika for saying the bracha of Chacham Harazim when he saw them, right? Now this is Rav Acha Brei Rav Ika. Maybe it was Rav Chanina Brei Rav Ika's brother or something, who knows? But anyways, he answers Rav Papa and he says that even Rabbi Eliezer, who says that tzidei reshus harabim is like reshus harabim, okay, that's only as long as in the reshus harabim next to the wall there were no like poles preventing like animals from bumping into the wall, right? Basically, you'd have animals and all sorts of carts and stuff that were passing around in reshus harabim, and they could theoretically bump into the fence of his property and cause damage, right? That actually happens to my parents. My parents in their house in New Jersey, sometimes cars bump into the trees and knock them down. It's really annoying. Anyways, so what you could do is you could put things there to prevent people from like knocking into the fence, or in my parents' case, the trees. In any event, so if there are none of these like poles and stuff preventing like the carts and stuff from knocking into the fence and causing damage, well then, so then Rabbi Eliezer would consider the tzidei reshus harabim to be like the reshus harabim. However, if there are poles there in reshus harabim preventing these animals and carts from hitting the fence, well then that whole area next to the fence, like between the pole and the fence, becomes part of the tzidei reshus harabim, and Rabbi Eliezer would agree that area would not have a status of reshus harabim, since like people aren't walking there, carts don't go there and stuff, and still, so it would be an area where it would be pater if you put it down there, and still Rabbi Eliezer would agree that in that case, if you go from the chotzer into the reshus harabim, right, and you pick up something in the chotzer in the reshus hayachid and then put it down in the reshus harabim by way of this tzidei reshus harabim, he would still agree that you would be chayiv. So in fact, it is a good precedent for a place where if you have an akira in a reshus hayachid and then you put it down a hanacha in reshus harabim by way of a place where it would be pater, so you're still chayiv. So according to the Chacham, they have the precedent for our case where you pick something up in a store, you then pass by way of the place where the storekeepers kind of sit there and then put it down in the reshus harabim, that you would be chayiv. Amr Rabbi Yochanan, says Rabbi Yochanan, Umode ben Azai. So ben Azai, you said that you're pater if you go from the store into the reshus harabim by way of this like sitting area. So he says you'd be pater because it's ki'ilu, you stop there. But he nonetheless admits, bizorek, that if you were to pick up something in the store and then throw it into the reshus harabim by way of this sitting area, you would be chayav for hotzah mereshus lereshus. Tanan Yachi, and we also learn in a brayso like this: hamotzi mechanus leflatya derech sityo chayav. If somebody is motzi something from the store to the reshus harabim by way of this sitting area, you would be chayav. Okay. Echad hamotzi ve'echad hamachnes, whether you are taking something out from the reshus hayachid into the reshus harabim, or bringing something in from the reshus harabim into the reshus hayachid, ve'echad hazorek ve'echad hamoshit, and whether you're throwing something and whether you're extending something from the reshus hayachid into the reshus harabim, you'd be chayav for all of that. Ben Azai Omer says, Ben Azai hamotzi ve'hamachnes pater. If he picks up something and walks it from the reshus hayachid into the reshus harabim, or vice versa, you would be pater. Because as we explained, it's ki'ilu we stopped in this sitting area. Hamoshit v'azorek, however, chayav. You would be chayav for extending and for throwing. Okay, very good. So we see a brisa supporting Rabbi Yochanan that Ben Azai would agree that you would be chayav if you throw something from reshus hayachid into reshus harabim by way of an area where you would, a karmelit. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught. Daled reshuyos l'Shabbis. So legabe otzah mereshus l'reshus on Shabbos, there are 4 different kinds of reshuyos, like areas. There's of course reshus hayachid v'reshus harabim. So of course there's the initial 2, which are the reshus hayachid, the private domain, and reshus harabim, the public domain. The karmelit, and also this karmelit thing. And we're going to explain what these things are, but it's kilu neither reshus hayachid nor reshus harabim. Umakom patur, and this other area where it's like no reshus at all, you're just going to be patur in that area. Fine. Ve'ezui reshus hayachid. What's considered a reshus hayachid? Charetz shu amok yud v'rachav daled. Let's say you have some kind of dugout area, some kind of trench, some kind of area that you dug out in the ground. It's 10 tefachim deep, and it's 4 amos wide. Okay? V'chein gader shu gavoa yud v'rachav daled. And what if you have a fence, and the fence is 4 amos thick, and it's 10 tefachim? That's a very thick wall. That's like a 6-foot wall. Even this wall behind me, if you're watching the video, I don't think it's 6 feet. Maybe it's like 3 feet or something. But anyways, but yeah, if it's 4 amos wide and 10 tefachim tall, so then that would also be considered its own reshus, and zeu, that would be considered reshus hayachid. So zohi reshus hayachid gemura. This is a complete reshus hayachid. Okay. Ve'ezui reshus harabim. What's considered a public domain? Sratya uflatya gedola umvos hamefulashin. So Sratya is a path that goes from one city to another city. That of course is made for people to walk on. Okay, for the public use, for them to walk on. A uflatya gedola, sort of like a main street where all the business of the city happens. Umvos hamefulashin, and a mavo hamefulash. What's a mavo hamefulash? So, okay, basically, I'm going to draw this out and put a sketch in the WhatsApp group. But basically, the way that they used to make the way that their houses, their housing kind of things were laid out, was that you would have like a number of houses, and these houses would open up into a chatzer. Okay, so you'd have a bunch of houses that would share like kind of a shared space. Now, so that's sort of a house, and then they're in the chatzer, and then you can have a few different of these like chatzeros, of these like shared spaces that open up into like some kind of like alleyway, let's call it, and that would be what's called a mavui. Okay? So now a mavui hamefulash is if it's open on both sides. So let's say you have this main street, and then off of Main Street there's like this alleyway, and from this alleyway you can make a right to go into one chatzer, you can make a left to enter into another chatzer, or you can keep on going straight, right? And you can leave this alleyway by going right through it, by cutting right through it. That's what's called a mavui hamefulash, right? A mavui that's kind of open on both sides. A regular mavui that's not mefulash would be almost like a dead end, right? It would be closed on the other end. So all three of these are made for people to be walking through, and therefore they are considered reshus harabim. Okay, so Zoe reshus harabim gemura. This is a complete reshus harabim. Okay. Ein motziin me reshus hayachid zo le reshus harabim. We don't take anything out from this reshus hayachid into reshus harabim, right? Ve'ein machnisin me reshus harabim zo le reshus hayachid zo. And we don't bring anything in from this reshus harabim into this reshus hayachid. Ve'im hotzi ve'hichnis b'shogeg chayav chatas b'mezid anush karis v'niska. Now, if he was motzi or machnis by accident, so then of course he brings a korban chatas. And if he does it on purpose, so if there was a warning, so then if he was warned and he accepted the warning and went ahead anyways, so it'll be chayav skila. If there was no warning, so then it'll be chayav karis. Okay. Aval yam uvika ve'istivanis ve'akarmelis eina lo kirshus harabim v'lo kirshus hayachid. However, the sea, like the river, like the sea, right? S-E-A, uvika, and sort of an area of fields. A bika generally is like a valley, but maybe the point is that in like the valley, it was full of fields. The istivanis, and this area that we were just talking about up until now, right? This area in front of the shops where the shopkeepers sit. Vea karmelis, and apparently the Gemara is going to talk about why is it saying vea karmelis, because after all, these are all example of karmelis. Okay. These are not like a reshus harabim. They're not like reshus harabim because they're not made for people to be walking through them, and they're not like reshus hayachid because they're not enclosed with walls. Ve'enosin v'nosnin besocha, and we don't carry 4 amos in this karmelis. Okay, even though it's not a reshus harabim, we still do not carry 4 amos. Ve'im nasa v'nasan besocha pater. However, if you did walk 4 amos in it, so then it's pater aval aser. Ven motziin mitocha l'reshus harabim, v'lo m'reshus harabim l'socha. And you don't, you're not motzi from a karmelis into reshus harabim, and you don't bring anything from reshus harabim into the karmelis. Ve'im machnisim m'reshus hayachid l'socha v'lo mitocha l'reshus hayachid. And you don't bring anything into reshus hayachid from it, and not anything from reshus hayachid, and not from it into reshus hayachid. V'im hotzi v'echnis pater. But if he was motzi or machnis, into or from a karmelis, it would be pater aval aser. Chatzeros shel rabim. If you have one of these chatzeros, right? If you have one of these chatzeros that I mentioned, a few minutes ago, right? That basically you would have a few houses that open up into a chatzer. If you have only one house that opens up into your chatzer, so it's your own private yard, well then it's a reshus hayachid, and that's that. However, if you have multiple homes that open up into a shared yard, okay, and by way of that shared yard you go into reshus harabim, so even though the shared yard is surrounded by 4 walls, so it technically speaking it's a reshus hayachid. However, because it's shared by multiple families, by multiple houses, so the chachamim don't want you to carry in there, because I guess hotzah v'achnasa and also carrying dalat amos. The chachamim don't want you to be doing any of that in this chatzer, because it's a gezerah that they're concerned that if you carry in this shared space, you might end up carrying in reshus harabim. Okay. So chatzeros sharabim umivos she'enon mifulashin. And what about a mavoi that we talked about, right? You have multiple of these chatzers that open into this kind of alleyway, and then that alleyway opens into reshus harabim. So in both of these cases, ervu mutarin lo ervu asurim. So if they join together, if basically all of the houses in the chatzer, let's say, kind of chip in to purchase a bread, and then they're all basically sharing this space together by way of this bread that they all chipped in for. So if they join together like this, so then they can carry in the chatzer. And if all the chatzers kind of join together in a bread, well then you can carry in that shared mavoi. Okay? But if they didn't make an eruv, right? So then you can't carry, of course, as many of us probably know from where we live, right? That we have eruvs that allow us to carry on Shabbos, because we're basically, right, any place where there's an eruv, that means that probably in one of the rabbis' houses in the community, there's a bread that the entire community I don't know, one way or another, I guess, chipped in to buy. I don't know how that even works. I never chipped in to buy any breads anywhere. But anyways, that's how the Eruv works, is that you basically take the whole area. Of course, you encompass it with some kind of Eruv fish wire thing. And then it's Ki'ilu, we're all like, the entire city is like one. I think that's how it works. That basically the entire city is considered now like in one chatzer, right? With lots of different houses opening up into it. And then we all kind of join together with some bread in some rabbi's house. And that's why we're allowed to carry in our cities. And I guess in order for us to be able to carry, I guess the assumption also it must be that like it's not a reshut harabim. I don't know. Apparently Erevin's really complicated. I don't know too much about it. But after Shabbos comes Erevin, so who knows? Maybe after we learn Erevin I'll know more about it. But it doesn't always work out that way. Anyways, sometimes you have more questions than answers. In any event. Fine. Adam Omid ala Iskopa. Oh. So now, we mentioned Iskopa yesterday, okay? And Iskopa is an area that is like right outside, like a house. It's like a porch, okay? So let's say you have a house. A house, of course, is reshut hayachid. And then in front of the house is a porch, okay? And so in this case, right, so Rashi says, Lefi she'eina rachav dalid. In this case, it's not 4 amos by 4 amos, okay? And therefore, Rashi says, Uvatal etzer reshus hayachid ve'etzer reshus harabim. So it's batel to both reshus hayachid and reshus harabim. So basically, so we're saying over here, right? So Adam Omid ala Iskopa, a person can stand on this porch, notel mi bala bayis v'nosein lo, notel me ani v'nosein lo, uvad shelo yito mi bala bayis v'nosein lo ani, me ani v'nosein le bala bayis, v'imnotel v'nosan shloshtan pturim. So if you have a guy who's on this porch, now this porch is right next to somebody's house, which is reshus hayachid, but on the other side of the porch is reshus harabim. So this is what's called a makom ptur, right? It's like, it's not any reshus to itself. It's batal to both the reshus hayachid and the reshus harabim. Therefore, he can pass things back and forth between the person in the house, no problem. He can also pass things back and forth between the ani who's standing in reshus harabim, no problem. However, he shouldn't be passing things from the balabayas inside to the ani in reshus harabim. And Rashi says, the mizalzel, I'm in the Rashi uvovad shelo yito on the first wide line of Rashi, the mizalzel be isuri Shabbos lechatchila legrom otzam reshus hayachid reshus harabim, which is very interesting because he's being mizalzel on isuri Shabbos lechatchila, right? He's like mizalzel, he's like putting down almost disgracing. I don't know. Isuri Shabbos, or just like not really taking seriously the Isurim of Shabbos to be a conduit to allow Hotzah Mereshus Reshus, which is interesting because, like, I don't know, I guess one person's zilzul is another person's like kula, or just like halachic way to do something in a permitted way. Like, I don't know, what would we say about surrounding entire towns in like fish line to allow people to carry? Is that also like mizalza on Isurim Shabbos? He says, because if you allow this, then you might explicitly be going from reshus hayachid to reshus harabim. I mean, you could quite possibly grow up in any of our neighborhoods and not even like realize that carrying on Shabbos is like a thing, right? Because you just grew up with an Erev all the time. I mean, I don't know. So it's interesting. Like, where do you draw the line? What's considered like being mizalzel on like the letter of the law, and what's something, what's just sort of being allowing something to be done properly. Anyways, the Acherim say Iskopa mishameshes beis reshuya. So it sounds to me like Acherim disagrees with what we just said about the Iskopa, that it's kind of like a chameleon, that it's batal to both reshus hayachid and reshus harabim. I think the Acherim is saying like, no, the Iskopa cannot be at the same time both a reshus hayachid and a reshus harabim. Rather, Bizman she'apesach pasuach kilifnim, pesach no kilachutz. That if the door to the house is open, well, then the porch is considered reshus hayachid. If the door to the house is locked, well, then it's considered like reshus harabim, right? But if when the door is open, the ani would pass something into him, so it would pass something to the guy in the porch, so mistama that would be hachnasa from the reshus harabim to reshus hayachid. Now, if this iskopa, if this porch was 10 tefachim off the ground, and it was 4 amos by 4 amos, well, at that point, it's then its own reshus, and it would be considered reshus hayachid. And Rashi seems to say that, you wouldn't even be able to pass from the reshus hayachid from the house into the skopa at this point. I'm not exactly sure why, because it seems to be reshus hayachid, but apparently the Gemara is going to explain that on Daf Tes. So we'll just have to be patient. Omar Mar, we said earlier, Zohi reshus hayachid. So we said that, we gave 2 examples for reshus hayachid, which is if you dig out a ditch that's 10 tefachim deep and 4 amos wide, or if you have a fence that is 4 amos thick and 10 tefachim tall, those are reshus hayachid. So the Gemara wants to know, what does it mean these are reshus hayachid? Implying that there must be something that isn't a reshus hayachid. What is that thing that isn't a reshus hayachid? So Lamute had Rabbi Yehuda. Yeah, it's to exclude Rabbi Yehuda's reshus hayachid thing, which we do not accept as a reshus hayachid. Titania, as we learn in the Brisa, Yasser al Kain Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Misha Yeshlo Beis Batim B'Shnei Tzidei Reshus Harabim. Oh, so let's say you have Main Street, right, where all the stores are, and then you have a guy who owns 2 houses, mamish, one opposite the other on either side of Main Street. So each house has a wall. So basically on Main Street, you basically now have 2 walls on Main Street. So does that make the area between the 2 walls a reshus hayachid? So Rabbi Yehuda says, yeah, it does. That's enough. The 2 walls on either side of Main Street is enough to make it a reshus hayachid. So he says, Osa lechi mikan v'lechi mikan, o kora mikan v'kora mikan, v'nose v'nosin be'emtza. So a lechi is basically like a pole that you stick in a ground, and a korah is like a beam that you, go from like one side to the other. So I think generally a lechi and a korah, it comes up also a little bit in the beginning of Masechta Sukkah as well. I believe that a lechi and a korah are generally there just as like a heker. It's like a reminder, like, hey, you're about to enter, a different reshus. So therefore, what Rabbi Yehuda suggests is that the area between the 2 walls are actually reshus hayachid. So what you should do is, you should put a lechi is a vertical, like, pole. So put a pole, so on like, at the end of one wall, right? So let's say, if you're imagining like you're walking through, Main Street, so you have one house on your right and one house on your left. So let's just take the house on the right. You would put a pole where the house on the right starts. Then you would put another pole where the house on the right ends. And that would be enough as like a sign to show like, okay, you're entering now into a reshus hayachid, and then, afterwards when you're exiting. Or the other option, I believe this is what it means, is that you would take basically a beam, instead of a vertical pole, you would take a beam and you would put it from one end of the house, like, I don't know, like at the end of like each house, like from one house to the other, and then also at the beginning, where this like reshus hayachid starts, you would kind of put one beam from one house to the other. Then where the reshus hayachid ends, you would put one beam from one house to the other. Okay, and that's your reshus hayachid. So Amrulo, they said to him, Ein me'arvin reshus harabim b'chach. And the Chacham said, no, you can't, make the reshus harabim into reshus hayachid like this. It would not be considered a reshus hayachid. So that is the reshus hayachid that is excluded, that we're excluding over here from being reshus hayachid. V'amai karu like gemura, right? The Brisa said this is a reshus hayachid gemura. What does it mean gemura? So ma'u detema, I may have thought, ki plige rabbanan alei Rabbi Yehuda to lahav reshus hayachid hanimile letata v'alizok module kamash malan. No, what this means is that these examples of digging out a ditch or, this thick fence, these are what's a reshus hayachid, right? Because it's considered like they have 4 walls, right? When you dig out the trench, 10 tefachim deep and 4 amos wide, it has 4 walls. And even this fence, okay, we mentioned, I believe yesterday we mentioned good achis, which is when, we mentioned with that basket, right? I forgot what it's called, but we mentioned with this basket that they were talking about that can I find what the name of that thing was? Traskal. With the Traskal, that it was on a pole and it was 10 tefachim off the ground, and we consider the sides of the basket as if they good asik, as if the walls go down to the ground. Well, now we're employing the opposite function, which is good. Right, so that was good achis, going down to the ground. Now this is good asik, which means that basically you have this thick fence so it's considered that the walls of the fence, right, either vertical side of the fence, go up continuously, and therefore since it's 4 amos wide, so the sort of sides of it go up indefinitely, and it's enclosed on all 4 sides. Now, however, this this main street that has 2 houses on either side isn't completely enclosed, therefore it's not a reshus hayachid, and therefore I may have had the havmina to say though that the Rabbanan were just being machmir, and when they were telling Rabbi Yehuda that no, this isn't a reshus hayachid, it's only to say like you can't carry in there. But what if you threw something from reshus harabim into this area with the houses on either side? Maybe they would say that it would be usher because it's hotzah mereshus l'reshus, right? Maybe they were just being machmir, and they're going to be machmir in both ways, right? They're saying it's not a reshus hayachid, therefore you can't carry, but it is a reshus hayachid in that you can't throw anything into there. No, so kamash malan, that they say no. The 2 examples of the furrow and the fence are reshus hayachid gemura, nothing, right? That Rashi explains gemura ki'ilu, right? Gemura klomar zohi shenigmru minyan mechitzos shalah. Right? This is, right, when you have 4 walls, that is when you have the proper amount of walls. 2 walls is not considered a reshus hayachid, and therefore you wouldn't be chayiv for throwing anything into this area. It's just completely a reshus harabim. Okay, fine. Omar Mar, we said earlier, Zohi reshus harabim. Okay, so we gave 3 examples of reshus harabim, right? That was the path that goes from one city to the other. That was also the main street of a city, and it was also this mavoi that you could pass right through, the mavoi amafulash. So, Zohi reshus harabim, lemute mai. What's that to exclude? What's something that wouldn't be considered reshus harabim? So, lemute idach to Rabbi Yehuda, to exclude a different opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Titnan, as we learn in the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, im haisa derech reshus harabim mafsaktan yisalkena litzdadin. Oh. So this is talking about if you have, basically for the Ole Regalim, for the people who would travel from wherever they lived to Yerushalayim for the Shalosh Regalim, they would set up like wells of water, and these wells were dug into the ground, okay? And they were 10 tefachim deep, and they were 4 amos wide, so they were essentially their own reshus. So what happens if it's Shabbos, and you want to, and you're traveling from wherever you are to go to Yerushalayim, and you're, camping out for Shabbos, whatever it might be, and you want to get some water. So if you just take your cup and you stick it into this, pit of water, and then you now put it down next to the well, right? So then it would be otzah mereshus l'reshus, because, this pit is a reshus hayachid, because it's where the well is. It's where it's 10 tefachim deep and 4 amos wide. And if you take the water out of there and put it down next to this well, so then you're putting it down in reshus harabim. So it'll be otzah mereshus l'reshus. So they said what you should do is you should take 4 kind of poles. I don't know why this works. I don't know Hilchos Eruvin, but apparently you would take 4 poles, okay, and you would space them out to be 10 amos away from each other, right? I believe it was 10 amos. It says the positive bename Eser amos, and there would be 10 amos between each of these poles, and then they would do that around the well, okay, and that would make the area, within this area of these poles would be a reshus hayachid, and therefore you'd be able to take water out of the well and put it down in this area, and it would be fine because it's all reshus hayachid, okay. So now Rabbi Yehuda is saying, Im haisa derech reshus harabim mafsaktan, what happens if the path, if the way that people walk, if this path of reshus harabim was passing through this area surrounding the well where they have these 4 poles? So, yisalkena litzdadin. So if I understand correctly, Rabbi Yehuda is suggesting that they reroute the path that the people would walk on so that it wouldn't pass through this reshus hayachid area, because if it does, then it would be mevatel this reshus hayachid area, i.e., it would be a reshus harabim, passing through and destroying this area around the well. And the Chachamim say, no, you don't need to reroute this path because it wouldn't be considered reshus harabim, right? This path of the people going through this area around the well wouldn't be considered reshus harabim, and that's what it's excluding, right? This path that goes through this area around the well is not going to be considered reshus harabim. Fine. Okay. Very good. V'amai karule gemura. So now why are we saying that this is like a reshus harabim gemura? Right? By the reshus hayachid, we had it to say that it needs 4 walls. What's pshat by over here by reshus harabim gemura? So the Gemara says there really isn't a point of calling it gemura. I did the Tana Reisha Gemura, Tana Nami Seifa Gemura. Okay. Since the Reisha, right, by reshus hayachid we said gemura, so by reshus harabim we also said gemura, but it's not so important. V'achshav Nami Midbar. Why don't you also count a midbar? After all, right, reshus harabim, as we've seen already, I think maybe even twice, we've seen that the halachos of reshus harabim are learnt out from the diglei midbar, from the flags that they had in the midbar, okay, in the desert. So why don't you consider the desert also to be one of the reshus harabims? So dihatanya, because after all we have a brayso that says ezohi reshus harabim. Sratu, Flatio, Gedola, Mavosim, Fulashan. Okay, so the 3 that we listed, right, the path from city to city, the main street of a city, and this mavoi that is open. Ve'amidbar, and a 4th, a desert. So why don't we over here in our brayso also mention the desert? So Mabai Lokasha, Kan Bizman Shisuel, Shruin Bamidbar, Kan Bizman Azeh. At the time that, so one brayso is talking about when the Jews were in the desert. When the Jews were in the desert, it was a reshus harabim, which is why we learn out all the halachos of reshus harabim from when the Jews were in the desert. But nowadays, where we're not living in the desert, so l'maisa, people don't really walk so much in the desert, right? We even learned in Masechta Brachos that if you were, right, walking in the desert, you would say Birkas HaGomel, right? It's really not a place you want to be. So therefore, nowadays it wouldn't be considered a reshus harabim because it's not a place where people generally walk. Amar Mai, we said earlier, Im hotzi vichnis b'shogeg chayav chatas b'mezid anush kares v'niskal. We said before that if you are motzi from reshus hayachid to reshus harabim or vice versa, so if you did it by accident, you are chayav a korban chatas. If you did it on purpose, well then, if you were warned, then you'll be chayav skila. If you were not, then you're chayav kares. Okay. B'shogeg chayav chatas pshita. Well, obviously, if you do something, if you would be motzi reshus on Shabbis by accident, you have to mean korban chatas. After all, it's something that you'd be chayav kares for if you did it on purpose. So of course, if you did it by accident, you're going to be chayav chatas. So the Gemara answers b'mezid anush kares v'niskal it's trichale. The only reason why we mentioned that b'shogeg chayav chatas is because we had to mention the opposite, that if you did it on purpose, then you'd get either kares or skila, depending on if you were warned. But hanami pshita, this of course is also obvious, because we already know from the Torah, right? The guy who collected wood on Shabbos and was stoned. So, hakamash milan kiderav. Oh, this is super interesting. So, the point of the brayso saying that if you are motzim reshus on purpose, you're chayav skila or kares, is to teach us like Rav. To Amar Rav, that Rav said, Matzasi Megillas Starim. This is super interesting. Bei Rabbi Chia. So Rav said that, I guess maybe he was rummaging through his uncle Rabbi Chia's drawers or something. Right? Rabbi Chia was his uncle. And he found a Megillas Starim. So if I understand correctly from Rashi, it's extremely interesting. Now Rabbi Chia was the same generation as Rebbe. Rebbe, right at the end of the Tanaim. Now Rebbe, of course, wrote down the Mishnayos. He was the editor of the Mishnayos. Until Rebbe, the Mishnayos, there was no such thing as Mishnayos. It was all Torah Sheba'al Peh. It was all by heart. It wasn't allowed to be written down. So what did you do then if you heard something that wasn't generally taught in the yeshivas? You heard something and you didn't want to forget it. What do? So you can write it down, but then you would have to hide it. So Rav found one of these hidden things, right, that his uncle Rabbi Chia had hidden. And it said in it, V'chasuv ba'isi ben Yehuda Omer, says Isi ben Yehuda, avos malachos mem chaser achas, that the avos malacha are 39, ve'enu chayiv ela achas, and you're only chayiv once. And what we're assuming that this means right now is that if you do, all 39 of them by accident, and you don't realize that right, and the whole time you don't realize that you're doing anything wrong, so you only have to bring one korban chatas. You do 39 melachos on Shabbos, the whole time you didn't realize that you're making any mistakes, so you just bring one korban chatas for all of them. Ini, is that really true? But we learn in the Mishnah, avos melachos mem chaser achas. We have a Mishnah that says that there are 39 avos melachos. Vavinan, but we ask, minyana lamali, how come we have to say that it's 39? Why not just skip the fact that it's 39 and just start listing them? And if I'm curious how many there are, I'll count them. Why do you have to tell me that there are 39? So va'amar Rabbi Yochanan shemasan kulam behelam achas chayva kol achas va'achas. Rabbi Yochanan explains, you know why he tells us that there are 39? Because if you do all of them by mistake, you're going to be chayiv 39 times. It's telling us how many korban chatases you're going to have to bring if you make a mistake and do all of them. So why is Rav saying that he found this Megillah Starim that says that you would only bring one korban? So Ela'ema eno chayav alachas man. No, what it means is what this Megillah Starim was saying from Isi ben Yehuda is that there are 39 melachos, and there's one of the 39 that if you do them, you're actually not chayav. You're actually not chayav for it. And what Isi ben Yehuda is telling us, and what this brisa is telling us by saying that if you are motzi reshus l'reshus on purpose, you are chayav kares or skila. So it's teaching us ha mehanach tulo mesapkan, that clearly hotzah is not one that is not one of the options for not being chayav. You are chayav skila or kares if you do it on purpose, and it must be one of the other 39 that you're pater for. Okay, fine. Amar Mai, we said earlier, aval yom uvika v'istivanis v'akarmelis einan lo kirshus hayachid v'lo kirshus harabim. We said earlier that the sea and a place that is full of fields, and this area in front of the shops where the shopkeepers sit, and a karmelis are not like a reshus hayachid, and they're not like a reshus harabim. Really? Uvika eina lo kirshus hayachid v'lo kirshus harabim? A place where there are fields is not like a reshus hayachid or a reshus harabim? V'yatnan, but we learn in the Mishnah, habika, a place of fields, b'yemos achama, so in the summer where there's nothing growing over there, so reshus hayachid l'Shabbos v'reshus harabim l'tuma. So legabe Shabbos, it's considered a reshus hayachid. It's considered reshus hayachid. And in terms of tuma, it's considered reshus harabim. What does it mean in terms of tuma? It's considered reshus harabim. So if you have a suffix tuma in reshus, so basically if you have a suffix tuma, right? You're not sure if you touched like a sheretz or something like that. So if it's in reshus harabim, we say that you are tahor. Suffix tuma in reshus harabim is tahor. Suffix tuma in reshus hayachid is tameh. Okay? So we're saying that this area of fields in the summer where there's nothing growing, so it's considered a reshus hayachid for Shabbos because, it's not a general place where most people walk. But legabe tuma, since it's not considered, it has to be what's called a beis hastarim. Makom stira. It's not a beis hastarim. No, that's something else. It has to be a makom stira, right? It has to be a completely hidden place. And since there's nothing growing there, some people kind of amble into there. So therefore, legabe tuma, it's considered, reshus harabim, and suffix tuma would be tahor over there. But legabe Shabbos would be reshus hayachid. Bimos hageshamim, in the rainy season where things are growing, so reshus harabim l'chan l'chan, it would be reshus hayachid l'chan l'chan. It would be considered reshus hayachid on Shabbos because people aren't, the public isn't walking there. But it would also be considered reshus hayachid for Tuma, because since things are growing, nobody's walking there at all, and therefore it's a suffix Tuma in this area would be Tameh because it's Reshus hayachid. No, so the kasha is, we're calling this Bik'ah a Reshus hayachid. But in our brisa, we called it a karmelit. So Amar Ula la'olam karmelit havia v'amai kari lo Reshus hayachid lefi she'ena Reshus harabim. So Ula says, don't geek out too much. It really is a Reshus. It really is a karmelit. So why are we calling Reshus hayachid? Because it's not a Reshus harabim, so called a Reshus hayachid, but it's a karmelit. Rav Ashi Amar ki go into Isla mechitzos. Oh, so Rav Ashi said, well, in the case where we call it a Reshus hayachid for Shabbos, is when it was surrounded by walls. Surrounded by walls. Therefore we call it a Reshus hayachid. Okay. V'chiha de Amar Ula, and like that which Ula said, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Karpev yotzer mi beis sa'asayim shelo hukaf ledira v'afilu kor v'afilu korayim hazarek lesocho chayev. So, okay, in general, in order for a fenced-in area to be considered Reshus hayachid, it has to be more than a beis sa'asayim. And there's a Rashi in the Kutei Rashi from Masechta Sukkah that says that a beis sa'asayim is basically the size of the size that the Mishkan was. Okay, so any area that is enclosed in a fence that is smaller than the size of the Mishkan, so that's considered Reshus hayachid. Once already it's larger than that, then you can't carry in there because we assume that it's not meant for living in there. Okay, so but Ula says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that if you have a karpef was an area outside of the city that they would enclose for storing wood. So if you have a karpef that is larger than a beis sa'asayim, right? Shelo hukaf ledira, that wasn't enclosed for living, it was enclosed for storing wood. Vafilu kor vafilu korayim, even if it's the size of a base core, or even twice that size, right? Which is even bigger than a beis sa'asayim, a really big area, but it's fenced. So hazorek lesocho chayev. If you would throw from Reshus harabim into that area, you're chayev. My time of mechitzai elish mechuseres diurin. Because at the end of the day, it's a mechitza. It's enclosed by a wall. It's more than dalet amos. It's got a wall that's 10 tefachim tall. So it's a Reshus hayachid. And therefore, if you would throw something from Reshus harabim into there, you'd be chayev. However, you can't the Chacham made a gzera that you can't carry in there dalet amos because even though it's a Reshus hayachid, it's not made for living, and therefore you don't carry in there. But it is a Reshus hayachid, and that's what the brisa meant when it says that this Bik'ah is a Reshus hayachid because it has a fence around it. Okay. The Gemara says, Bishlam Rav Ashi lo amar k'de'ula. So the Gemara says, I understand why Rav Ashi didn't want to say like Ula, right? Because Ula says, no, when it says Reshus hayachid, it doesn't Reshus hayachid, it really means karmelit. So I understand why Rav Ashi didn't say like Ula, and instead he said it was fenced, and that's why it's a Reshus hayachid. Ula, my time lo amar kishmaite. I mean, why didn't Ula say like himself, right? Rav Ashi said it's fenced in, and we know, like Ula says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that if it's fenced in, it's considered Reshus hayachid. So why doesn't Ula say like his own teaching, which is that if it were to be fenced, then it would be a Reshus hayachid? So why didn't you just say that it was fenced and it was a Reshus hayachid? So Amar lach, so Ula would say to you, I'll tell you why he didn't say it was fenced. Ideis le mechitzos bika karila karpefi. If it had walls around it, then it wouldn't be called a bika, it would be called a karpef. And this brisa is specifically talking about a bik'ah. Therefore, it must be that there was no walls around it, and therefore that's why it's a karmelit. For Rav Ashi, Reshus hayachid katani. Rav Ashi says, look, it says Reshus hayachid. Reshus hayachid is Reshus hayachid. It's not a karmelit. In order for it to be Reshus hayachid, it must have walls around it. That's why he says that, right? That it's fenced. Woo. Okay, that was a serious daf. Now, I don't want this share to go over an hour, so I'm gonna cut this off. But this is pretty interesting, I think. We talked about a lot of new concepts over here. We talked about, of course, the 4 reshut and Shabbos. We started talking about chatzeros, mavois, eruvin. All sorts of interesting stuff here. And then there was that cool thing about Megillah Starim, Torah Shabbal Peh being written down. Very, very cool. I hope you all enjoyed. Yeah, you got to go slowly with these dapim. They're a lot more complex than the Gemaras and Brachas. A lot more methodical. But I hope you're all enjoying, and I'm looking forward to seeing y'all tomorrow. Bye-bye.